You're pulled over. The officer takes your documents, walks back to the cruiser, then returns and says something that sounds almost casual. Go ahead and step out and come back here to the rear of your vehicle for me. Most people just do it without a second thought because it sounds like nothing more than a logistical instruction, the same as being asked to roll down a window or hand over a license. Here's the mistake almost every driver makes in that exact moment. They treat walking to the back of the car as a neutral, meaningless relocation. It isn't. It's very often the specific point in a stop where the real substantive questioning begins, away from your passengers, away from the comfort of your own vehicle, in a spot specifically chosen because it changes how people behave, what they say, and how much they say it. I'm going to walk through exactly why officers do this, what they're legally allowed to require versus what's actually still up to you once you're back there, and the precise language to use so that stepping to the back of your car doesn't quietly turn into the moment you talk yourself into a much bigger problem than the one you started with. Before I get into it, subscribe now, because this is one of those moments that feels completely ordinary and routine right up until it isn't, and almost nobody prepares for it specifically. The legal basis for being ordered out of your car. Let's start with what's actually settled law here, because it matters for how you should think about this request. In Pennsylvania versus Mims, 1977, the Supreme Court held that an officer can order a driver out of a vehicle during a lawful traffic stop without needing any additional justification beyond the stop itself. The court reasoned that officer safety during a stop is a significant enough interest that this minor additional intrusion, being asked to step outside your car, doesn't require its own separate cause. 2 decades later, in Maryland versus Wilson, 1997, the court extended this same reasoning to passengers, holding that officers can order passengers out of a vehicle too, again without needing independent justification specific to the passenger. What this means practically is straightforward. If an officer asks you to step out of your car, that instruction itself is almost always lawful, and there's little to be gained by resisting or arguing about it in the moment. Officers' safety concerns during a roadside stop are treated as a legitimate, standing justification, and courts have consistently upheld this specific instruction as reasonable. It's worth understanding the reasoning behind Mims a bit more, because it explains why this rule has held up so consistently in the decades since. The court weighed the intrusion on a driver, being asked to step outside a vehicle they're already lawfully stopped in, against the safety interest of an officer who otherwise has to approach a car without knowing what's happening inside it, sometimes with limited visibility, sometimes at night, sometimes with multiple occupants. The court found that balance tipped clearly toward allowing the instruction, given how minor the additional intrusion is compared to a driver who's already been lawfully stopped in the first place. This is part of why arguing about the instruction itself rarely accomplishes anything useful roadside. It's about as settled as traffic stop law gets. That settled nature is exactly why this video isn't about whether you can refuse to step out, because in almost every situation, you can't meaningfully refuse that specific instruction without creating an entirely new problem. It's about what happens after you comply, in the specific location you're directed to, which is where your remaining rights actually come into play. But here's the part that gets lost in that settled law, and it's the entire point of this video. Being lawfully ordered out of your car, and even being lawfully directed to a specific spot like the rear of the vehicle, does not mean you've lost any of your other rights once you're standing there. The location changes. Your underlying rights to remain silent about certain things, to decline consent to searches, and to decline voluntary tests do not change simply because you've walked 12 feet. Why the back of the vehicle specifically? It's worth understanding why this particular spot gets used so consistently, because it isn't random. The rear of the vehicle serves several practical purposes from the officer's side, and knowing them helps explain why this moment feels different from the initial conversation at your window. First, it's a common staging area for field sobriety testing, since it tends to offer flatter, more open ground than the shoulder directly beside a moving lane of traffic, along with better lighting from the patrol vehicle at night. If field sobriety tests are going to happen, this is usually where they happen, which means being asked to the rear of your car is sometimes a signal, even if unstated, of what's about to be asked of you next. Second, and this is the part most people never think about, it physically separates you from any passengers still in the vehicle. Passengers can't easily overhear the conversation from the back of the car the way they could through an open window, and they can't offer reassurance, corrections, or simply the psychological comfort of not being alone. Officers are trained to understand that people often speak more freely, and sometimes more carelessly, once they're isolated from anyone who might otherwise hear what they're saying or react to it. Third, standing at the rear of the vehicle, away from the cabin, gives the officer a genuinely different vantage point. It's easier to observe your balance, your movements, and your overall demeanor without the visual clutter of a car door, a steering wheel, or a seatbelt in the way. This isn't inherently improper. Officer safety and observation are legitimate interests, but it's worth knowing that the position itself is often chosen specifically because it makes you easier to evaluate, not just easier to talk to. The conversational shift that happens back there. Here's the pattern worth watching for. At the window, the conversation is usually brief and transactional. License, registration, the stated reason for the stop. Once you're standing at the rear of the vehicle, the tone frequently shifts into something more conversational, sometimes deliberately so. So, where are you two headed tonight? Long day. Everything okay? You seem a little nervous. This isn't necessarily hostile, and officers aren't required to disclose that this is a more investigative phase of the stop, but it's worth recognizing it for what it often is, an attempt to get you talking in a more relaxed, less guarded way than you were at the window. The mistake almost every driver makes here is treating this shift in tone as purely social, and responding accordingly, with the same openness you'd bring to small talk with a stranger. The problem is that everything said at the back of the vehicle is just as much a part of the stop, and just as documentable, as anything said at the window. A relaxed tone doesn't mean relaxed stakes. It helps to understand this shift isn't a trick in the sense of being dishonest. Officers genuinely are trained that relaxed, conversational rapport tends to produce more candid answers than a formal, rigid line of questioning does. This is a well-established interviewing technique used far beyond traffic stops, and it works precisely because most people naturally match the tone they're given. If an officer sounds relaxed and friendly, most people respond in kind, dropping their guard along with their formality. Recognizing that this is a known, deliberate technique, rather than simply a byproduct of the officer's personality, makes it much easier to stay measured in your own responses without needing to match that same relaxed tone yourself. You can be polite and calm without being conversationally open, and those two things are genuinely different postures, even though they can look similar from the outside. What to actually say once you're back there. The physical instruction to step out and move to the rear of the vehicle is one you should comply with. Arguing about it accomplishes nothing, since it's a lawful request under MIMS regardless of the reason behind it. Compliance with that specific instruction is not the same as consenting to answer every question that follows it. And keeping those two things separate in your mind is the entire skill this video is trying to teach. Once you're standing there, if the conversation drifts into open-ended questions unrelated to the original stop, you're allowed to redirect calmly. I'd rather just focus on the reason for the stop, if that's all right. This isn't rude, and it doesn't need to sound defensive. Said in a flat, unhurried tone, it simply draws a line between complying with a physical instruction and volunteering conversational information you don't have to provide. If you're asked to perform field sobriety tests, understand that in most states these are voluntary, not mandatory, even though the request is rarely phrased as optional. A calm response works here too. I don't wish to perform any tests. You're not required to explain why, and you're not required to justify the decision. Declining field sobriety tests is different from refusing a breath or blood test after an arrest, which carries its own separate legal framework. Declining voluntary roadside tests generally does not carry the same automatic license consequences. If, once you're at the rear of the vehicle, the officer asks to search your car, the same rule applies here as anywhere else in a stop. I don't consent to any searches. Your physical location doesn't change this right. Whether you're standing at your window or standing at your bumper, consent to search is still entirely your decision unless the officer has independent legal authority, probable cause, a warrant, or a specific recognized exception. That doesn't depend on your agreement at all. A realistic walkthrough. Here's roughly how this tends to unfold. The officer says, "Go ahead and step out and come back here for me." You comply, walk to the rear of the vehicle, and stand normally. The officer says, "So, been out tonight? Where are you two coming from?" This is the moment worth recognizing. You can answer plainly if you're comfortable doing so, or you can redirect. "I'd rather just handle the reason for the stop, if you don't mind." If the officer follows with, "Any reason you don't want to answer that?" you can respond calmly, "No particular reason, I just prefer to keep this focused on the stop." You're not obligated to justify the boundary itself, and repeating it calmly, without escalating, is far more effective than getting defensive about why you're setting it. If the conversation moves toward field sobriety testing, the officer might say, "I'm going to have you do a couple quick tests for me. That all right?" You can respond, "I understand, but I'd rather not perform those." If pushed further, "It'll go faster if you just do them." You can simply repeat, "I appreciate that, but I'm declining the tests." Consistency here matters more than elaboration. The more you explain or justify, the more material you're providing for a report. The shorter and more consistent your answer, the cleaner the record becomes. What's happening with your passengers while you're back there? It's worth knowing that while you're at the rear of the vehicle, it's common for a second officer, if one is present, to approach the passenger side and begin a separate, simultaneous conversation with anyone still inside. This isn't accidental. Separating the driver and passengers means their answers to similar questions, like where you're coming from or where you're headed, can be compared afterward for consistency. Discrepancies between what a driver says at the back of the car and what a passenger says at the window, even innocent, meaningless discrepancies caused by ordinary memory differences, sometimes get treated as more significant than they actually are. Knowing this ahead of time doesn't require coordinating a rehearsed story with your passengers, which would create its own separate problems. It simply means understanding that this is a known technique, and that declining to answer open-ended questions applies just as much to your passengers as it does to you. If a passenger is uncertain what to say when questioned separately, "I'd rather not answer questions beyond what's required," works for them too, in exactly the same calm, consistent way. It's worth being clear about what this isn't. This isn't advice to coordinate a story in advance, coach a passenger on what to say, or agree on a shared version of events before officers arrive at either window. Doing any of that, especially in a way that could later look like an attempt to align accounts artificially, creates its own set of problems entirely separate from the original stop. The point here is simpler and more defensible than that. Each person in the vehicle independently has the same right to decline open-ended questions, and exercising that right individually, honestly, and without any prior coordination is very different from constructing a shared narrative. One is a constitutional right exercised normally. The other invites exactly the kind of scrutiny this video is trying to help you avoid. What not to do at the rear of the vehicle. Don't treat the relocation as an invitation to relax your guard simply because the tone feels friendlier away from the cabin of your car. Don't over-explain your evening, your plans, or your relationship to any passengers in an effort to seem cooperative. None of that speeds up a stop that's fundamentally either going to end in a citation or continue into something more involved. An extra detail only ever adds material to a report, never removes it. Don't perform field sobriety tests simply because declining feels awkward in the moment. Awkwardness is a genuinely poor reason to give up a right that carries no independent penalty for exercising. And don't assume that because the officer's tone has become more casual, the stakes of what you say have gone down with it. They haven't. What happens if you're asked to stay there for an extended time? Sometimes, standing at the rear of the vehicle turns into a longer wait than expected. The officer walks away to run your information, check for warrants, or speak with another officer, and you're left standing there for several minutes with no clear sense of what's happening or how much longer it will take. This is generally still part of the ordinary, lawful duration of a stop, provided it doesn't stretch on unreasonably beyond what's needed to complete the routine tasks tied to the original violation. If the wait starts to feel unusually long, it's reasonable to ask, calmly, "Is there anything else you need from me, or am I free to go once this is finished?" This isn't about rushing the officer through legitimate tasks like running your license or checking for outstanding issues. It's about making sure the stop doesn't quietly drift past its original purpose without you noticing. The same concern that applies to any traffic stop regardless of where you happen to be standing during it. Staying calm and simply asking the question is almost always more productive than visibly showing impatience, which tends to draw more attention rather than less. The short version: being ordered out of your vehicle and directed to the rear is almost always a lawful instruction under Mims and Wilson, and there's little to gain by resisting the physical instruction itself. What changes once you're back there is often the tone of the conversation, not your underlying rights. You can still decline to answer open-ended questions beyond the stated reason for the stop. You can still decline field sobriety tests in most states, and you can still decline consent to a search, regardless of how relaxed or friendly the conversation at the rear bumper feels compared to the conversation at your window. The mistake most drivers make is confusing physical compliance with conversational compliance. They're not the same thing, and keeping them separate is the entire skill worth walking away with from this video. If you remember nothing else from this, remember this one distinction, because it's the thread running through every section above. Your legs can be told where to stand. Your mouth generally cannot be told what to say. Those are two separate systems, governed by two separate sets of rules, and the entire mistake this video is named for comes from letting the first one quietly override the second simply because they happened at the same moment, in the same spot, a few feet behind your own bumper. If this changed how you'll handle that walk to the back of your car next time, that's exactly why I put these together. Subscribe now, so this is already second nature before you're the one standing there. Hit like so more drivers understand the difference between complying with an instruction and answering every question that follows it. And drop a comment if you want me to cover exactly what field sobriety tests actually measure and why they're less reliable than most people assume. This is general legal education, not legal advice for your specific situation. The voluntariness of field sobriety tests and the exact scope of officer authority during a stop can vary somewhat by state and by the specific facts involved. If you're dealing with an actual situation like this, the right step is speaking with a licensed attorney in your state who can evaluate the specific facts, not general guidance from a video. Know the difference between following an instruction and answering a question. One is required. The other, almost always, is still up to you.